She just wanted a ride, but that stranger who stopped the car wasn't who he seemed. What happened next? Hello, viewer. Thanks for joining us. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. Sophia Alencar woke to the steady rhythm of rain drumming against her bedroom window, a faint shiver running through her shoulders. Outside, thick grey clouds threatened a larger storm, mirroring the quiet thunder of anxiety that had echoed within her for weeks. 32 years old and living in Asheville, North Carolina, a town known for its vibrant art scene, tucked among the misty Blue Ridge Mountains, Sophia felt torn between the life she once imagined and the reality she now faced. Years ago, she had been a promising illustrator in New York, her future seemingly bright. But when she found herself unexpectedly pregnant and alone, she traded her creative dreams for the stable if less fulfilling path of freelance design work. Each small project helped keep the bills paid, especially since she was raising 6-year-old Leo on her own. Still, in the back of her mind, the passion for drawing remained, pulsing quietly yet persistently. A sleepy voice came from the doorway. Leo, in dinosaur print pajamas, rubbing the last traces of sleep from his bright eyes. "Mommy, is the rain ever going to stop?" he asked, peering out at the relentless downpour. Sophia smiled softly, brushing aside a damp strand of her brown hair. "Maybe not for a while, sweetheart," she replied, hoping her tone sounded lighter than she felt. While she prepared breakfast, her thoughts wandered to the email she'd received the night before, an invitation from a small local publisher, White Oak, to discuss potential illustrations for a children's book. It was the best chance she'd had in months to reignite her career. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, a mixture of excitement and dread. Could she possibly succeed in that world again? A gentle knock on the apartment door interrupted her reverie. Mrs. Henderson, her elderly neighbor, appeared with concern etched into the lines on her face. "Honey, I hear the storm's only going to get worse. Need anything from the store before everything closes up?" The older woman's warm eyes slid from Sophia to Leo, revealing genuine care. Sophia shook her head politely, touched by the offer but anxious not to impose. Later, she gathered her drawings in a large portfolio case. One piece in particular, a half-finished illustration of a mother fox curled protectively around her kit, made her pause. She'd drawn it during a rare burst of late-night inspiration. The vulnerable tenderness of the image reflected her own life. How fiercely she guarded Leo and how deep her longing for artistic expression ran. The clock on the kitchen wall advanced steadily, each tick stoking the urgency Sophia felt. She had to leave soon if she was to make the meeting on time. But first, she rummaged for something suitable to wear, a white blouse, dark jeans, and a well-worn jacket from her New York days. She caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Shadows under her eyes betrayed the worry she tried to keep hidden. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself why she was doing all this. Leo deserved a mother who pursued her dreams, who found fulfillment in her work, someone he could be proud of. Outside, the rain intensified, pounding relentlessly on the sidewalk and the metal railing outside her apartment. With her portfolio and keys in hand, Sophia knelt down to look Leo in the eye, telling him she'd be back as soon as she could. He nodded bravely, clinging to a small, stuffed dinosaur. Mrs. Henderson would keep an eye on him for the next couple of hours, a blessing Sophia deeply appreciated. Stepping out into the downpour, she forced herself to believe this day could be different, that it might be the start of a better life for both her and Leo. As she hurried to her old sedan, a distant rumble of thunder underscored the sense that big changes were rolling in, both in the clouds above and in her own heart. Rainwater continued to stream down the windows when Sophia felt her phone vibrate inside her jacket pocket. Her hands still damp from washing breakfast dishes, she snatched it up, pulse quickening with the sense that this might be the call she was waiting for. "Hello, this is Carol from White Oak Publishing," came a brisk, professional voice. "Just confirming your meeting today. Still good for you?" Sophia swallowed hard, forcing a confident tone. "Yes, absolutely. What time should I be there?" An almost imperceptible pause followed. Then Carol explained that the editor-in-chief, Richard Brooks, needed to move her appointment earlier. "Could you make it by 12:30? He has to leave for another commitment shortly afterward." An uneasy flutter seized Sophia's stomach. She'd built her morning routine around a slightly later time. Sure," she managed, hoping her voice didn't betray her nerves. When the call ended, she exhaled, already feeling the pressure ramp up. Not only did she need to assemble her best portfolio pieces, but she also had to brave the increasingly heavy storm, all on a tighter schedule. Moments later, the phone buzzed again. This time, it was Clara, her best friend and a yoga instructor at a local studio. Sophia could almost see Clara's bright smile through the phone. "Hey, I just wrapped up a session in the middle of this downpour. Are you all set for today? Big day, right?" Clara's tone always radiated positivity, a stark contrast to Sophia's quietly anxious energy. Sophia filled her in on the sudden time change. "I feel a little overwhelmed if it goes badly. I don't know," she sighed, massaging her temple with her free hand. Clara's reassuring laugh came through. "Relax, Sophie. You've got talent. I remember how unstoppable you were back in our Brooklyn loft days. Show them what you can do." Memories of late-night art sessions in that tiny shared space in New York flitted through Sophia's mind. Paint splattered floors, the optimism that once buoyed her every brushstroke. She felt a twinge of longing for that version of herself, unafraid and eager to prove something. "Thanks, Clara. I appreciate it," Sophia murmured. "Just cross your fingers, the universe cooperates." When the call ended, she hurried to the corner of her living room that doubled as her makeshift art studio. Stacks of sketches, watercolor sheets, and digital prints were stacked high on a small wooden table. Sophia carefully selected pieces that showcased her range: whimsical forest creatures, delicate line art of children at play, fantastical cityscapes that reflected her old New York dreams. One by one, she slipped them into a protective folder, heart thumping at the thought of Mr. Brooks judging her work. Outside, the sky had taken on a dark grey hue. Wind whistled around the eaves, rattling the windows. Sophia tried to quell the rising tension by double-checking her portfolio and pausing to breathe. A quick glance at the time confirmed she couldn't linger much longer. Traffic was bound to be chaotic in this weather. She organized Leo's things for school, grateful that the helpful Mrs. Henderson would keep an eye on him until her friend Clara could step in if necessary. She caught sight of Leo perched in front of his favorite cartoon on the tablet, blissfully unaware of how much this meeting meant for them both. He waved happily, and she mustered a smile in return, her chest tightening at how badly she wanted to succeed for his sake. Grabbing her umbrella and tugging on a raincoat, she braced herself for the deluge outside. Water cascaded off the apartment building's gutters, forming puddles that threatened to soak her sneakers within seconds. As she dashed toward her aging sedan, keys in hand, she silently willed the storm to ease, though deep down she knew the real storm she had to face was her own self-doubt. Sophia started the sedan, a stab of worry hitting her when the engine coughed in protest. Outside, sheets of rain pelted the car's windshield. The radio emitted only static, an aural backdrop to the swirling anxieties in her head. Every time the wipers swished, she glimpsed the flooded street. Asheville's storm drains were already struggling, and traffic crawled through the downpour. As she maneuvered onto a side road, she remembered the day Leo's father left, how abruptly his promises vanished, leaving her alone to bear the weight. That memory still stung like a fresh bruise, even after all these years. It also hardened her resolve not to depend on anyone. She had learned the hard way that people can walk away just when you need them most. But today, of all days, she wanted to believe again. She wanted to trust that her art could matter, that her dreams could still find a place in the real world. The letter from White Oak Publishing felt like the first genuine opportunity she'd had in ages. An open door she was terrified might slam shut if she arrived late. As she pushed forward, the engine sputtered, nearly dying out. She winced. "Come on, don't do this now," she muttered under her breath. A single beep on the dashboard indicated an electrical issue, but just as quickly as it had started, the sputtering stopped. Relief washed over her, though her nerves were still taut. If the car failed completely, would she have time for a tow truck? Probably not. Lightning flickered in the distance, followed by a low rumble of thunder. She turned up the defrost, hoping to keep the windshield clear. Anxiety gnawed at her. Maybe it would be smarter to call the publisher and postpone. But she knew opportunities like this, especially for unknown illustrators, were scarce. Would they even agree to reschedule? Maybe not. She clenched the wheel, her palms sweaty despite the cold. A quick glance at the rearview mirror revealed the little craft project keychain Leo had made at school, his name spelled out in colorful beads. The sight filled her with both warmth and longing. He deserved a mother who fought for her dreams. Because if she couldn't show him perseverance, who would? Rainwater splashed onto the windows, forming rippling patterns. The car jerked, forcing her to apply more gas. For a moment, she felt as if the storm was testing her resolve. Memories of every rejection she'd experienced, the father who left, the lost art opportunities, churned inside her. She almost imagined letting the car idle, turning around, returning to her small apartment with its stack of unpaid bills. But that path led nowhere except deeper into the rut she longed to escape. Then the dashboard lights flickered alarmingly. She heard the engine cough one more time and felt the vehicle lose power. Panic rose like bile in her throat. Fighting to keep the sedan under control, she inched it to the shoulder, heart pounding. When the engine finally died, all she could hear was the relentless drumming of rain on the roof. "No," she whispered, trembling hands gripping the wheel. Her phone's battery, she realized, was nearly empty. She stared into the distance. No open shops, no visible help. She might have to trek on foot, but the meeting's location was still miles away. She considered the injustice of it all. She wasn't asking for much, just a chance to show she could illustrate a children's book. That chance now seemed to be slipping through her fingers. Carried off by the storm, she slumped in her seat, cold and drained. Then a flash of determination ignited inside her. Giving up would be worse than risking failure. Gritting her teeth, she reached for the phone. Maybe she'd get lucky with a taxi. Maybe something would change. One way or another, she refused to let the storm or her own fears decide her fate. In that moment, she realized that standing still was no guarantee of safety, and moving forward, no matter how uncertain, was the only way she'd ever find her way out of the gloom. Rainwater poured in sheets as Sophia examined the tangled mess under the car's hood, her hair plastered to her cheeks. The engine was still warm, but emitted a slight, ominous hiss. She knew next to nothing about car repairs. Her coat and jeans were soaked through, her teeth chattering from the cold. Staying there, she told herself, was not an option. She jumped back into the driver's seat, phone in hand, battery icon blinking red. One last chance. With shaky fingers, she dialed the local cab company, silently begging the universe to connect the call. The line rang. A crackling voice answered. Then, silence. The call dropped. The phone screen went black. Her heart sank. Time was mercilessly slipping away, and the storm showed no signs of letting up. The clock on the dashboard was dead, but she guessed she had less than an hour until the publisher's cutoff. Leaning against the seat, she replayed every possible scenario in her mind, trying to weigh the risks of staying put versus stepping out into the rain, alone, in search of help. At that moment, the phone rang unexpectedly, momentarily lighting up. Her breath caught. She answered in a rush, wiping raindrops off the screen. "Hello?" A familiar female voice crackled on the other end. "Sophia? It's Carol from White Oak. Mr. Brooks is wondering if you'll make it." "Everything okay?" The signal was weak, Carol's words nearly drowned out by static. Struggling to project calm, Sophia explained her car trouble and promised she'd do her best. "He can wait until 2 at the latest," Carol said. Then the call ended. A swell of panic struck. She couldn't recall feeling so cornered in years. She peered through the rain-blurred windshield at the deserted stretch of road. A shuttered gas station about 100 yards away had a dark sign, clearly closed in this weather. The wind whipped the car door when she tried to open it, nearly slamming it back on her. Gathering her courage, she pulled it shut again and sank into the seat. "I just wanted a ride," she mumbled in defeat, memories of all her near misses swirling. She thought of Leo waiting at school, of her battered dreams, of her entire life that seemed to be in limbo. If only she had another pair of hands to help jumpstart the car, or even a phone charger that fit her outdated model. A tear mingled with the rain on her face, though she wasn't sure if it was from despair or the biting chill. Minutes ticked by as she debated giving up. Maybe she could just reschedule, find a tow, and slink back to her apartment. Yet the thought of losing this chance gnawed at her. She pressed her forehead to the steering wheel, forcing back a wave of tears. A part of her whispered that she'd come too far to retreat now. Finally, she gazed at the road again, determined to make some move. Even if it was risky, she couldn't stay stranded here. Maybe she could walk until she found a cafe or a store that was open. She steeled herself and reached for the door handle. The wind whipped inside instantly, sending a damp chill through her. Then she saw headlights piercing the grey gloom, moving slowly along the flooded asphalt. Without overthinking, she stepped out, frantically waving her arms. "Please stop!" she shouted into the downpour, her voice muffled by the relentless hiss of rain. The oncoming car slowed, then eased to a stop a few feet ahead of her. Relief and trepidation mingled in her chest. She realized this might be her only shot, yet she also remembered every warning about hitchhiking. A swirl of conflicting emotions rose within her, but she took a breath, summoning a courage she didn't quite know she had. If she wanted to reach her future, she might just have to trust someone, if only for a brief ride. The passenger door swung open, letting Sophia climb into the warmth of the stranger's car. She was soaked to the skin, trembling from cold and worry. For a moment, she hesitated, years of caution and fear flickering in her mind. But the man's voice was calm as he spoke over the sound of the heater. "Get in before you catch pneumonia. You look like you've been standing in that rain for hours." She slid onto the seat, struggling to catch her breath. Thank you. I'm so sorry for the trouble," she managed, trying to wipe her dripping hair away from her eyes. He offered a reassuring nod. "No trouble at all. My name's Alex, by the way." An automatic smile found her lips. He appeared to be in his mid-30s, with slightly tousled dark brown hair and an air of understated poise. Nothing about his faded jeans, sturdy boots, or plain jacket suggested affluence or pretension, just someone who might be passing through. Yet something in his demeanor struck her as more self-assured than the average traveler. "I'm Sophia," she said, hugging her soaked jacket closer. "My car died a few yards back. I really need to get into downtown Asheville for a meeting." The wipers thumped against the windshield as Alex eased back onto the road, driving carefully around flooded patches. "I'll take you wherever you need to go," he replied, voice warm yet quietly reserved. Sophia stole a sideways glance at him. A flicker of tension pulled at his features, like he carried a private heaviness, though he was making an effort to seem relaxed. Whatever his reasons, she was grateful he'd stopped. At that moment, trust was a currency she didn't have in abundance, but her desperation overshadowed her doubts. "Are you from Asheville originally?" he asked, breaking a brief silence. She shook her head. "No, New York. I moved here a few years ago with my son." She didn't mention Leo's father or how her life took an unexpected turn. Instead, she kept it simple, still weighing how much a stranger needed to know. The roads were slick, water pooling around the tires. Every so often, Alex glanced her way, as if assessing whether she was okay. She glimpsed the reflection of her own face in the passenger side window, tired, anxious, yet strangely hopeful. The heater blew blessedly warm air, reviving her numb fingers. A sudden wave of gratitude washed over her. If not for Alex, she'd probably be slogging through the rain on foot, or stuck waiting for a tow truck that might never come in time. "Thank you," she repeated, voice quieter now. "I really do appreciate this." He gave her a small smile. "Honestly, I'm glad I came this way. I needed a sense of purpose today, and maybe helping you is it." His words felt oddly vulnerable. Sophia studied him discreetly, noticing the slight shadow under his eyes. She couldn't help but wonder what burdens he carried, but pressed no further. Everyone had their own secrets. She knew that well. She tried her phone again, hoping for a miracle. It remained dead. Alex spotted her concern. "Need to let someone know you're all right?" he asked, rummaging for a charger. "Doesn't look like I have the right cable," he added apologetically. "Sorry about that." Sophia sighed. "It's okay. I just hope my friend Clara isn't worried." They approached the outskirts of Asheville, where familiar buildings emerged through the haze of rain. Sophia's heart beat a little faster. She was still behind schedule, but she might actually make it if traffic cooperated. She glanced at Alex, her nerves raw from the day's events yet buoyed by relief. Something about him felt more composed than his casual clothes implied. As they passed a flooded intersection, he slowed and peered out at the rising water. "We're almost there," he assured her softly. Sophia nodded, pressing the portfolio case tighter against her chest. She had no idea that this brief ride, her whispered wish for just a ride, would become a turning point in her life. For now, she was only grateful to be moving forward again, unaware of the hidden layers behind the man offering her sanctuary from the storm. The drumming rain muffled as Sophia stepped into the polished lobby of White Oak Publishing, her chest still tight from the sprint across the flooded sidewalk. Every inch of her clothing felt damp, but at least she'd arrived. Carol, the same assistant she'd spoken to on the phone, stood behind a small reception desk, glancing at the clock with mild concern. "You made it," Carol said, offering a polite smile. "Mr. Brooks is waiting, but we'll have to keep things short." "Follow me." Sophia nodded, still catching her breath. She felt Alex's presence behind her. He had parked quickly and insisted on walking her in to make sure she was safe. Now, he lingered near the lobby entrance, as though unsure if he should stay or go. When Carol opened the door to Richard Brooks's office, Sophia entered to find a tall, silver-haired man studying a manuscript. He looked up, mild surprise flickering across his face at her soaked appearance. "Sophia Alencar, right?" he greeted, offering a dry handshake. "I heard you had some trouble getting here." Sophia managed a nervous laugh. "Car trouble in the middle of a storm isn't the best way to start a meeting, I admit. Thank you for seeing me anyway." She clutched her portfolio like a lifeline, determined not to let her disheveled state distract from her art. Richard motioned her toward a chair. "Storms happen. What matters is what you have to show me," His office smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Children's illustrations lined the walls, bright animals and magical landscapes that resonated with the work Sophia once dreamed of creating full-time. Taking a steadying breath, she placed her portfolio on the desk. As Richard flipped through the pages, Sophia fidgeted, wiping stray droplets of water from her sleeves. He paused on a watercolor painting of a whimsical fox and her kit, the image that had once filled Sophia with such hope. She dared to look at his face, searching for any sign of approval. He nodded thoughtfully. "Your lines are clean, and the sense of narrative is strong," he remarked. "You capture expressions with subtlety, something kids notice more than people think." A small flicker of pride warmed her chest. She'd almost forgotten what it felt like to have her work praised by someone in the industry. Still, she braced herself for criticism. He sighed, tapping a finger on one piece. "Your color palette here could be lighter, more inviting. We're focusing on early childhood readers, so a softer, more playful tone might help. Also, some of these sketches need to be refined quickly if we're going to meet our fall release window." Sophia's heart soared at the word "we." "So, are you saying—" Richard offered a cautious smile. "I'm interested. I can't promise a large contract yet, but we've got a children's short story anthology that needs an illustrator. It would be your foot in the door. I'd need a few sample pages in 2 weeks." His gaze was firm, but not unkind. "Think you can manage that?" A surge of adrenaline shot through her. "Yes. Absolutely." She wanted to grin from ear to ear, but her cheeks simply felt hot, and she hoped he read her excitement. Carol poked her head in, reminding Richard of his next appointment. Sophia stood up, gathering her belongings. "Thank you so much," she said, her voice uneven with emotion. He nodded. "Send me your revised sketches as soon as possible. We'll take it from there." A moment later, Sophia stepped into the hallway, feeling like she was floating. Alex appeared, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked softly. Sophia's lips curved into a hesitant but genuine smile. "I got a chance, a small contract, but it's real," she whispered, still hardly believing it. A subtle relief flashed across Alex's features. "I'm happy for you," he replied, and the sincerity in his voice made her chest tighten in a way she couldn't fully explain. As they emerged back into the rain-soaked street, she hugged the portfolio tight and glanced at Alex with gratitude and new respect. She'd crossed a threshold not just physically but emotionally. Leaning on someone else had led her to an opportunity she'd thought lost. Now, she wondered where this unexpected encouragement might take her next. Long after the meeting ended, Sophia found herself glancing at the passenger seat of Alex's car, feeling a strange mixture of gratitude and awkwardness. She had insisted he drop her closer to downtown so she could swing by the school and pick up Leo. Reluctantly, he agreed, though he'd offered to drive her straight there. Something about leaving him at the curb felt final. Yet Sophia couldn't shake the sense she'd see him again. By the time she collected Leo from his after-school program and finally made it home, dusk was settling over Asheville. Her apartment, with its slightly peeling paint and mismatched furniture, felt both comforting and confining, a stark contrast to the polished office at White Oak. She flicked on the overhead light, revealing her half-finished sketches scattered across the coffee table. Leo bounded in, rummaging for a snack. "Mama, you're smiling," he observed, blinking up at her with curious eyes. "Did something really good happen?" She tousled his hair. "It might have," she admitted, warmth rising in her chest. "I got a chance to draw for a real publisher, but I'll need to work extra hard." Before she could explain further, her phone buzzed with an incoming call. "Finally," she muttered, expecting it to be the tow service regarding her broken-down sedan. But it was Clara instead. "Sophie, you've been off the grid all day. Everything okay?" Her friend's bright voice crackled over the line. In a rush of words, Sophia recounted the storm, the ride from a stranger named Alex, and the meeting with Richard Brooks. Clara's excited squeal nearly drowned out the rest of the conversation. "This is huge!" Clara exclaimed. "You've waited so long for a break. And, wait, who's Alex? Did you get his number? Don't leave me hanging." Sophia felt her cheeks burn. He just helped me out. We're not exactly... No, I didn't get his number. It's complicated." She stared at a damp coat tossed on a chair, remembering Alex's quiet reassurance in the publisher's hallway. "But he seemed... different." Clara chuckled knowingly. "Look at you, Ms. Single Mom, doing something spontaneous for once. I'm proud of you. Let me know if you want to talk more. I can drop by tomorrow. We'll celebrate. Do a quick yoga session to calm your nerves." Ending the call, Sophia felt the day's weight settle. She went to the kitchen, noticing the sink half full of dishes, a small testimony to the juggling act she was about to face. She'd need to refine her sketches for White Oak, finalize a new sample piece, and still manage Leo's bedtime routine. Her shoulders tensed, but beneath the anxiety glimmered a renewed sense of purpose. After settling Leo with a sandwich and a glass of milk, she stood by the window, peering out at the distant silhouette of the mountains. The storm had finally passed, leaving the sky bruised with purples and dark blues. She wondered if Alex was still in Asheville or already on the road again. Part of her wanted to reach out, though she had no way to do so aside from hoping he might appear. It was a foolish notion, but her chest tightened at the thought that maybe, for the first time in a long while, she'd let someone in without bracing for disappointment. In a moment of determined resolve, she cleared a space at the dining table, spread out her art supplies, and flipped through her portfolio. Richard's critique echoed in her mind, lighter, more playful colors. She could do that. She just needed to push past her self-doubt. Leo tugged at her sleeve. "Mom, can you show me what you're drawing?" His big eyes shone with curiosity. Sophia smiled, pulling him onto her lap. "Sure, buddy. I'm working on a story about a little fox family." As she guided his small fingers over the pencil lines, she felt a fragile but powerful conviction grow. This was the life she wanted, combining motherhood and art, forging ahead into uncertain territory, but finally living, not just surviving. When Leo wandered off to finish his snack, Sophia inhaled sharply, telling herself she could handle it all, her new project, her unpredictable future, and maybe the possibility of trusting someone again. That last part would take time, but at least now, she was daring to imagine it. Less than a week after her initial meeting at White Oak, Sophia found herself returning to the publisher's offices with a fresh batch of sketches under her arm. The adrenaline that had fueled her late-night work sessions still buzzed through her veins, but her stomach tightened with nerves. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt such a mix of eagerness and dread. Upon arriving, Carol greeted her with a brisk nod. "Richard's in the collaborative workspace today. Just head down the hall." Sophia followed the directions, passing posters of children's books pinned in neat rows. She paused at one featuring a bright, cartoonish rabbit, reminded of the whimsy she aspired to capture in her own art. The workspace turned out to be a large, open room with wide tables, drafting lamps, and the soft hum of quiet conversation. A few illustrators hunched over tablets or notebooks, occasionally exchanging tips. Overhearing bits of dialogue, talk about color theory, scanning techniques, or upcoming deadlines, made Sophia's pulse quicken. She wanted to be part of this creative buzz, yet feared she wouldn't measure up. "There you are," came Richard's voice from the far side of the room. He motioned her over with a wave. She navigated past chairs and clusters of half-finished storyboards, feeling a twinge of nostalgia for her old life in New York's art collectives. Back then, she thrived on communal energy, brainstorming with fellow artists, until it all changed. Richard tapped a stack of pages on the table. "All right, show me what you've got." Sophia laid out her sketches, a series of fox-themed vignettes and a handful of side characters for the short story anthology. She swallowed hard as he examined them, occasionally tilting his head or tapping his chin in concentration. Nearby, a tall woman in her early 30s with cropped hair approached, curiosity on her face. "New contributor?" she asked, glancing at Sophia's sketches. Richard nodded. "Nicole, meet Sophia Alencar. She's working on the anthology we discussed." Nicole studied the illustrations, a friendly smile quirking her lips. "They're lovely. I like how expressive your fox family is. Welcome aboard." Her tone carried no snobbishness, just genuine interest, and Sophia found herself relaxing a fraction. Richard cleared his throat. "The color palette is more playful now, which is good, but keep an eye on consistency across panels. Children's books often rely on repeated motifs. If the fox cub has a pink tail tip in one image, it needs to be pink in all of them. That kind of detail." He tapped another drawing. "Overall, solid improvement. Let's refine these 2 or 3 pieces for the final pitch. Think you can manage that?" Sophia nodded vigorously. "I'll make it work. Thank you for the direction." She felt a surge of relief. No harsh criticism, no hidden sarcasm, just constructive pointers that would help her grow. A faint clamor in the corner of her mind wondered if she truly belonged here, but she tried to push it aside. She wanted this. She was ready to fight for it. As she gathered her pages, Nicole pointed to a colorful flyer tacked on a notice board. "Asheville Art and Culture Festival, 1 month away. You might want to check that out, especially if you're building a name locally," Nicole said. "A lot of small publishers and freelance artists set up booths or do live sketches." Sophia leaned in, reading the details. It reminded her of the festivals she attended in Brooklyn, places where she used to network and land small commissions. The idea of stepping onto that stage again made her heart skip. She could see the potential, meeting new contacts, showcasing her style, and maybe even finding more stable opportunities. But the same anxieties rose. Would she have time? Could she handle being a single mom, a new illustrator under contract, and a festival exhibitor? Richard finished typing something on his tablet. "Keep in mind," he added, glancing at her pointedly, "the more exposure you get, the better for you and for us, if you can handle it." There it was. If you can handle it. Sophia gripped her portfolio, mentally recalling the myriad responsibilities waiting at home. Still, a spark of determination flared inside her. This was the special world she'd been afraid to revisit, but it beckoned with promise. "I'll think about it," she told Nicole, a tentative smile blooming. Deep down, she already knew she wouldn't be able to resist taking that next step into the unknown. The next few days blurred into a new routine for Sophia, if one could call it routine at all. By sunrise, she was often at her kitchen table, hunched over sketches with a cup of coffee, her eyelids heavy from late-night drawing. Leo would shuffle in, rubbing sleep from his eyes and begging for cereal. Once he was off to school, she'd hole up for hours refining fox illustrations or adjusting color palettes, occasionally breaking to answer emails from White Oak. Afternoons were a juggling act of errands, parenting, and inevitably more drawing. Despite the whirlwind, a bright thread of determination wove through her days. She felt more alive creatively than she had in years. Still, the pressure mounted. Richard's notes arrived by email in short, direct bullet points. Simplify backgrounds, unify color scheme, watch your page composition. Each line underscored how little time she had to perfect each piece. She was adding final touches to a watercolor one evening when she heard a knock at her door. Mrs. Henderson stood there, gripping the doorframe for support. dear. I hate to bother you, but I felt a bit dizzy. Mind if I sit for a moment?" Worry flared in Sophia's chest, and she immediately led the elderly neighbor to the sofa. "Of course. Let me grab you some water." Mrs. Henderson patted her hand with a reassuring smile. "It's probably nothing serious, just a spell. Wanted to make sure I wasn't alone if I keeled over." Her shaky laugh didn't lessen Sophia's concern. "I'll check in on you more often," Sophia promised. "Please take it easy." The brief scare rattled her. The older woman had become her safety net for Leo's babysitting emergencies, and now Sophia realized how precarious that support could be. Later, she phoned Clara for a chat, mentally worn from the day's close call. As soon as Clara picked up, her friend launched into an excited spiel about a new yoga retreat she was planning. "But enough about me." "How's the art going?" Clara asked, voice full of genuine warmth. Sophia exhaled. "It's going okay, busy. I'm still unbelievably behind on deadlines, but I'm kind of addicted to it now," she admitted. "All these years, I forgot how it felt to wake up thinking about a project I love. It's exhilarating." "That's what I like to hear," Clara cheered. "And about that Alex guy you mentioned, any news? Is he an actual real person? Or did you hallucinate the perfect Good Samaritan?" A flush crept over Sophia's cheeks. She glanced at her silent phone, half expecting a text that would never come. "No, I haven't seen or heard from him. I don't even have a way to reach him." She tried to sound unbothered. Truthfully, though, her mind wandered to him in quiet moments, replaying that gentle concern in his eyes. Clara teased. "Well, maybe you'll bump into him if it's meant to be. Meanwhile, don't let it distract you too much. Focus on your dream, girl." Hanging up, Sophia sat in the dimly lit living room, Leo fast asleep in his bedroom. She let her gaze drift to the corner where pages of in-progress illustrations lay spread across the floor. Could she manage if Mrs. Henderson fell ill? Could she handle a festival if White Oak asked her to make a public appearance? Still, part of her yearned for more than a good job. She craved connection too. In the quiet hush of night, she found herself checking local event listings. Sure enough, that Asheville Art and Culture Festival banner kept reappearing. For years, she'd closed herself off from such social gatherings, too consumed with paying bills and being a stable parent. But now, everything felt different. She had a reason, and soon, maybe the courage to step forward. Taking a deep breath, she flipped open her planner, scribbling down the festival dates, just in case. The words blurred momentarily as she fought a rush of fatigue and emotion. Yes, she was tired. Yes, her support system was shaky. But every stroke of her pencil reminded her she was building something new, a life less haunted by the ghosts of missed opportunities and more guided by the daring hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd find balance in the chaos. A week after her midnight phone call with Clara, Sophia found herself at a small, cozy cafe downtown. Its brick walls were adorned with local paintings, swirling abstracts, gentle landscapes, and children's book illustrations framed under soft, warm lights. Nicole had invited her to join a casual meetup of local artists, promising it would be low-key and full of good conversation. Arriving with her sketchbook tucked under one arm, Sophia felt the familiar knot of anxiety coil in her stomach. She almost turned back at the door, but then she spotted Nicole's friendly wave from a corner table. Taking a steadying breath, Sophia slipped inside, letting the aroma of freshly brewed coffee calm her nerves. Seated with Nicole were two other illustrators, a muralist and a freelance graphic designer. Introductions bounced around the table. Jared specialized in children's book covers. Felicia was a storyboard artist for a local ad company. And Miko painted vibrant street art across Asheville's underpasses. Within minutes, Sophia realized she was among kindred spirits, people juggling deadlines, creative ruts, and that ever-present fear of not making ends meet. Nicole gestured for Sophia to sit next to her. I was telling them about the anthology you're illustrating, she said. You're basically one of us now. The welcoming tone in her voice left Sophia bashful yet pleased. She sipped her latte, soaking in tips on blending watercolor washes or marketing prints on social media. Halfway through the conversation, Nicole asked, Sophia, do you sell any work online? You mentioned you had leftover prints from older projects. Sophia nodded, describing the modest online store she'd set up years ago but rarely promoted. Well, Nicole replied, somebody must have discovered you. Saw a post in our community page that you had a sudden bulk sale this week. Sophia's eyes widened. A bulk sale? She fumbled for her phone, remembering the email notification she'd dismissed as a glitch. Sure enough, there it was. Order confirmation, 8 prints sold. She scrolled, heart pounding, but the shipping address had been listed as a P.O. box. I don't even know who bought them, she murmured, excitement and confusion mingling. A flicker of suspicion danced through her thoughts, conjuring an image of Alex, the mysterious stranger who had seemed oddly captivated by her art. But that was probably just wishful thinking, or was it? Her cheeks flushed with the memory of how he had gazed at her sketches with such genuine interest. She tried to brush the notion aside. He could be anywhere by now. Jared nudged her, snapping her out of the reverie. Whoever it is, that's a good sign. Means your work is resonating. Could be a collector or maybe a fan. Either way, celebrate. As the evening wore on, Sophia found herself laughing at Felicia's stories about tight ad deadlines and Miko's tales of painting murals at dawn to avoid traffic. The warmth of camaraderie made her chest expand with relief. For so long, she'd felt alone in her artistic ambitions, just a single mom struggling in the quiet corners of her apartment. Now, she was discovering a network of people who got it, who lived it. Eventually, the group dispersed, each person heading home to face their next creative hurdle. Nicole lingered by the exit, turning to Sophia with an encouraging grin. Keep me posted on your anthology progress. And if you decide to do the festival, maybe we can share a booth. It's a lot less intimidating that way. Sophia's lips parted in a grateful smile. Thank you. I'll let you know. A soft wave of gratitude washed over her. She truly wasn't alone anymore. Outside, the night air carried a hint of the mountain chill. She paused under a street lamp, reflecting on how swiftly her life had shifted from stagnation to opportunity. Her phone felt heavy in her hand as she toyed with the idea of searching for Alex. But she had no clue where to start. Letting out a breath, she reminded herself that more pressing matters, her deadlines, Leo's daily routine, Mrs. Henderson's well-being, needed her focus. Still, as she walked toward her car, a small spark of hope flickered. Maybe the person who'd purchased her prints anonymously was closer than she imagined. For now, she embraced the knowledge that she'd found new friends, new momentum, and a future that no longer seemed defined by lonely nights and unrealized dreams. Late afternoon light streamed through Sophia's living room window, illuminating the scattered drafts of Fox illustrations. Pages piled on the coffee table, all in various stages of completion. She glanced at the clock and realized she only had about 20 minutes before rushing to pick up Leo from school. A pang of anxiety flickered. The anthology's deadline loomed. The festival application window was creeping up, and bills, always the bills, lined her mailbox. She was gathering her portfolio to head out when her phone buzzed with a text from Nicole. Hey, any progress on finalizing color consistency? Richard wants updates soon. Sophia sighed, typing back a quick reassurance. She wanted to stay on top of everything, but the weight of her commitments pressed like a heavy cloak on her shoulders. Later, as she guided Leo by the hand through a small grocery store, her mind raced with mental checklists: milk, bread, fresh fruit, more printer ink for sample prints. Leo tugged on her sleeve, pointing out a display of candy bars. She gently steered him away. "Maybe later, buddy," she said, smiling despite her fatigue. Turning down an aisle, she felt her heartbeat jolt. Standing near a display of organic produce was Alex, the same dark hair, the same alert stance. He wore a simple jacket and jeans, blending in with the everyday shoppers. Yet he seemed different from the fleeting memories she'd held onto since their last meeting. He caught sight of her and paused, surprise lighting his expression. "Sophia," he said, voice warm but slightly hesitant. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again." Her breath caught. Part of her wanted to demand an explanation. Where had he been? Why had he vanished? Another part of her wanted to run. Leo squirmed impatiently beside her, breaking the tension. "Hi," Sophia managed, swallowing hard. "How are you?" Alex offered a polite nod to Leo, who blinked up at this stranger. Then Alex cleared his throat, returning his gaze to Sophia. "I've been around," he answered cryptically. "I thought about contacting you, but I realized I didn't have your number or anything." His gaze flickered, almost as if he were testing how much he could safely reveal. She realized she was gripping the grocery basket too tightly and forced herself to relax. The memory of their stormy introduction resurfaced, along with the lingering warmth she felt when he'd driven her to White Oak. "I've been busy," she said, hoping her tone was casual. "Freelance work, taking care of my son." Leo pressed closer, intrigued by Alex's presence. Sensing the awkwardness, Alex crouched slightly to greet him. "Hey, I'm Alex." "Good to meet you." Leo glanced at Sophia for reassurance, before offering a small wave. Then Alex stood, returning his attention to her. "Could we talk? Maybe over coffee? My treat?" Her mind whirled. She had deadlines, dinner to make, and 1,000 reasons to keep her distance. But her heart, battered by past disappointments, still recognized the gentle kindness in his eyes. "Maybe," she conceded. "Another time. I really have to run now." A flicker of disappointment crossed his face, but he nodded. "I understand. Look, I'm staying at a little cottage on the edge of town, not sure for how long, but if you want to reach me—" He grabbed a scrap of paper and jotted down a phone number. "No pressure," he added softly. She slipped the number into her pocket, her emotions tangling. "Thanks. I gotta go." With that, she guided Leo away, heartbeat pounding with more force than she cared to admit. Part of her felt drawn to Alex's gentle concern. Another part, all too aware of the man who'd left her to raise Leo alone, screamed caution. Outside, the sky rumbled faintly, thunderheads gathering in the distance. Sophia loaded the groceries into her trunk, that slip of paper with Alex's number burning a hole in her pocket. She wondered if a new storm was rolling into her life, and if, this time, she was brave enough to face it. The following morning found Sophia hunched over her desk at dawn, finalizing rough sketches for White Oak. A half-empty coffee mug balanced precariously near her laptop as she double-checked color continuity. Outside, the sky was still pink, and Leo slept soundly in the next room. In the hush of that moment, she marveled at how different her life felt, fuller, more chaotic, yet oddly purposeful. By midday, she'd managed to send a new batch of scans to Richard, weaving in lighter tones and whimsical details he had requested. A pang of pride flitted through her chest. She might be exhausted, but she was delivering. Her phone chimed, and a small wave of nerves fluttered. It was the number scrawled on the paper Alex had given her. She stared at the message. "Hey, it's Alex. Hope you don't mind me texting first. If you're free sometime, I'd love to catch up properly. No pressure." For a long moment, her fingers hovered over the screen. Was she ready for this? Did she even have the emotional bandwidth? Finally, she typed back, "I might be free later this afternoon. Does that work?" His reply came quick. Sure, there's a cafe near the riverfront. Riverside Roast. 4 p.m. She agreed, ignoring the flicker of trepidation in her gut. Clara always said she was too closed off, so maybe this was a chance to break that pattern. Part of her remembered how helpful Alex had been, but an inner voice insisted on caution. Still, as she pulled up in front of Leo's school at dismissal, she noticed an extra bounce in her step. Hours later, she found herself standing outside Riverside Roast, heart thumping. Inside, the cafe was small and rustic, with warm lights strung across the ceiling. Alex sat at a corner table, wearing that same unassuming jacket, and rose to greet her. "Thanks for coming," he said softly. She settled into the chair across from him, a swirl of scents, fresh coffee, sweet pastries, calming her nerves. "I don't have long," she began, glancing at her watch. "I need to get back to Leo." If he seemed disappointed, he hid it well, nodding. "I appreciate whatever time you can spare." They spoke about safe topics at first, her illustration progress, his enjoyment of Asheville's natural trails. But as the minutes wore on, the conversation dipped into more vulnerable territory. Alex admitted he'd been decompressing from a high-pressure life without offering specifics. Sophia, in turn, confessed the emotional strain of being a single mother and the fear that she could lose everything if her art didn't flourish. A hush lingered between them then, thick with unspoken empathy. "You're doing better than you think," Alex offered quietly. "From what I can see, you're talented and determined. That's a powerful combination." His words sent a subtle warmth spreading through her chest, a feeling she hadn't experienced in a long time, being truly seen, not pitied. She found herself studying his features, noticing hints of fatigue in his eyes, as if he carried burdens he wasn't ready to share. Yet the sincerity in his voice felt genuine. I also wanted to say thanks again for that day in the storm," she murmured. "I was so close to missing my big chance." He shrugged, a shadow of a smile curving his lips. "Right place, right time." "I'm glad it helped." Though he kept his tone casual, something flickered in his expression, perhaps relief that she didn't regret their encounter. Sophia's phone buzzed, reminding her it was time to pick up Leo from Mrs. Henderson's. She rose with a reluctant sigh. "I really have to go." She paused, gathering her coat. "But maybe we can do this again." The question hung in the air, and she felt her cheeks heat. A quiet smile lit Alex's face. "I'd like that," he said simply. "Text me whenever." As Sophia stepped back out into the crisp afternoon sun, a tentative sense of optimism welled within her. Yes, life was complicated and uncertain, but maybe, just maybe, letting someone in wouldn't be the catastrophe she'd always feared. Her heart thudded in her chest, uncertain but alive, as she headed toward whatever came next. At midnight, Sophia hovered beside Leo's bed, pressing a cool cloth against his forehead. His fever had spiked earlier that evening, derailing her plan to finalize another batch of anthology illustrations. Instead of painting whimsical forests, she spent hours taking his temperature, coaxing him to sip water, and fighting the swell of panic every time he whimpered in discomfort. Exhaustion clung to her bones, but worry kept her alert. Around 1 a.m., her phone vibrated on the bedside table, a message from Alex. She'd told him earlier that Leo wasn't feeling well, but she hadn't expected him to stay awake. Checking in. "How is he? Need anything?" The text read. She hesitated, glancing at the half-finished sketches on her desk. The pharmacy was closed, she was out of fever-reducing syrup, and she felt trapped. Biting her lip, she sent a reply, "Running low on meds. Stuck here with him." Any 24-hour place around. Within minutes, Alex called. There's an all-night pharmacy about 15 minutes from me, he said gently. I can drop something off if you want. I won't stay. I know it's late. Her heart twisted with gratitude and a hint of shame. Was it right to lean on him like this? She thought of the father who'd left her and Leo behind, the times she'd learned to do everything alone. Yet she recalled how effortlessly Alex had offered help in the past. If you're sure, she murmured, I'd really appreciate it. By the time Alex arrived with fever medicine, the clock neared 2 a.m. He slipped into her apartment quietly, wearing a simple hoodie and jeans, hair slightly tousled from the late-night drive. He set the small pharmacy bag on the kitchen counter. Any improvement? He asked, voice laced with genuine concern. Sophia shook her head, her fatigue palpable. He's sleeping, but it's fitful. She rubbed her eyes, feeling a surge of guilt for exposing her messy reality, unwashed dishes piled in the sink, artwork strewn across every surface, and her son ill in the bedroom. She forced a weak smile. Thank you. This means a lot. He offered a gentle squeeze of her arm, a simple gesture that nonetheless made her eyes sting with tears she refused to shed. I'm glad to help, he said quietly. If you want, I can wait in the living room in case you need anything else. She almost said no, pride welling up. But the exhaustion won out. Okay, just for a bit. After administering the medicine, she watched Leo's breathing settle into a steadier rhythm. Relieved, she crept back to the living room. Alex stood by a half-finished painting pinned to the wall, studying it with a subtle smile. You captured the fox's expression beautifully. It's like it's concerned for its cub, he observed. It's how I've felt lately, she admitted, hugging her arms. I'm always worried about Leo, about money, about whether I'm good enough at this whole art thing. He turned, compassion softening his dark eyes. You are good enough. Better, actually. His voice dropped. I admire how you handle everything alone, but you don't have to all the time. Her pulse fluttered at his words, a mix of warmth and wariness. There was a time I thought I'd have someone beside me, but that didn't happen, she whispered. She stepped back, feeling vulnerable. Honestly, I just wanted a ride that day, you know. I never expected any of this. Alex's lips parted, his expression touched by a hint of guilt she couldn't decipher. Sometimes the smallest choices set off bigger changes than we realize, he said. In my case, I needed a reminder that not everything in life is about deadlines and obligations. Obligations. The word hung heavy in the air, stirring Sophia's curiosity. Before she could press further, Leo moaned faintly from the bedroom, summoning her back. She cast Alex a grateful yet conflicted glance. Thank you again. Maybe we can talk more later. He nodded, seeming relieved to have a brief escape from her probing gaze. Anytime. When she returned, moments later, he was gone. A quiet ghost in the night. Exhaustion seeped into her core, but her thoughts swirled with questions. Who was this man who showed up at 2 a.m. with medicine, yet spoke like someone weighed down by secrets? As she sank onto the couch, relief at Leo's easing fever blended with a simmering certainty. The deeper she let Alex in, the more her life would transform, and she wasn't sure she could go back. Sophia rarely attended formal gatherings, but White Oak urged her to appear at a local charity gala to promote the upcoming children's anthology. With Leo feeling better, she left him in Clara's care, pulled on a modest black dress she'd last worn in New York, and headed for the event space downtown. A swirl of nerves tightened her stomach. She was no stranger to crowds, but representing herself as a rising illustrator at a gala felt surreal. Nicole greeted her at the entrance, offering a quick hug. You look great, she whispered, leading Sophia into a softly lit ballroom. Table displays featured local sponsors, while a small stage boasted a projection screen rotating through images of philanthropic donors. The hum of polite conversation filled the air, punctuated by occasional bursts of laughter. Trying to steady her nerves, Sophia collected a name tag from the registration table. She spotted Richard across the room, deep in conversation with some potential partners, so she drifted toward a corner to observe. A tray of champagne flutes passed by, but she declined. Her thoughts already felt cloudy. Suddenly, a familiar profile caught her eye. At first, and she doubted herself, but the angled set of his shoulders and the shape of his jaw were unmistakable. Alex was there. Her heart thudded, a mix of joy and confusion flaring. He wore a sleek suit, looking at ease among polished business types. But it wasn't simply his presence that rattled her, it was how others reacted to him. An older man approached Alex with a wide grin, shaking his hand vigorously. Two younger associates stood nearby, eager for his attention. Sophia inched closer, curious. Another man, possibly an event organizer, addressed him with evident deference. "Mr. Hayes, we're honored by your support tonight, Mr. Hayes." She frowned, scanning the rotating images on the screen behind them. Her breath caught when one slide displayed a headshot of Alex, except the caption read, "Ethan Hayes, CEO of Revasio Tech." A chill darted through her veins. Everything around her blurred. The hum of conversation receded to a dull roar. Ethan Hayes, CEO. This was no casual stranger passing through Asheville. He was a wealthy tech magnate, someone who had money, power, and apparently a high-profile business. A montage of philanthropic contributions flashed beneath his name, highlighting major donations that dwarfed the small charitable gestures she'd once thought notable. Sophia's stomach flipped. The recollection of his simple car that day in the storm, looking perfectly average, now felt deliberate. The undercurrent of sadness in his eyes. Could it have been about living a lie? She replayed all their conversations, searching for clues. He'd never actually said he was broke or ordinary. He'd just let her assume. Rage and humiliation churned like a hot coil in her chest. Had he come to Asheville to play a role, hide from his responsibilities, or indulge in some kind of escapist fantasy? Her cheeks burned. She'd poured out her vulnerabilities, let him comfort her son, accepted his help at her lowest moment, and he had concealed who he truly was. She took an unsteady step backward, nearly colliding with a tall man in a tuxedo. Apologies stumbled from her lips as she made a beeline for the exit. She couldn't breathe in that room, not with Ethan, Alex, or whoever he was, lounging among corporate elites like a figure out of a magazine. She felt betrayed, like a naive fool who'd let down her guard. Just as she reached the lobby, her path blocked by a small cluster of attendees, she heard someone call her name. Turning, she found herself face to face with him, Ethan. His expression was stricken, a storm of regret swirling in his eyes. "Sophia, please, wait." His voice was low, urgent, but her mind pounded with a single thought. He isn't who he seemed. Without another word, she pushed past him and fled into the cool night air, a tear escaping before she could stop it. She'd only wanted a ride that day, and somehow she'd ended up shattered all over again, right when she'd dared to hope. Sophia's breath came in ragged bursts as she rushed onto the empty side street, her heels clattering against the pavement. The glitz of the gala hall receded behind her, replaced by a nauseating swirl of thoughts. She heard footsteps pound after her and knew it was Ethan. No longer Alex, but Ethan Hayes, a man she scarcely recognized. He caught up to her, near a dimly lit lamppost. "Sophia, please," he pleaded, voice hoarse with desperation. "Let me explain." She whirled around, eyes blazing. "Explain what? That you're a millionaire CEO who pretended to be someone else? That you let me believe we were on equal footing, while you—" Her voice cracked, tears threatening to spill. Why would you lie about who you are? Were you just bored? Slumming it? Collecting sob stories from unsuspecting single moms? He recoiled as though struck. It wasn't like that. I needed to get away from my life for a while. The stress, the constant demands. I wanted something real, not tied to my money or my name. His tone was anguished, his eyes brimming with regret. Real. The word stung like salt in a wound. Every memory of their late-night chats, his gentle care for Leo, and the quiet moments they'd shared now felt tainted. She stood rigid, arms crossed to contain her shaking. "You should have told me," she said in a trembling whisper. "Instead, you let me open up to you, made me think we were just two struggling souls trying to figure life out." Ethan took a hesitant step closer, hands lifted in a placating gesture. "I never meant to deceive you. I was afraid if you knew I ran a tech empire, you'd shut me out or treat me differently. The day of the storm, I hadn't planned any of this. I saw you stranded but then you kept lying," she interrupted, voice rising. "Every time we talked, you had a choice to come clean, and you didn't." His face contorted, torn between shame and despair. "I'm sorry," he managed, the words sounding pitifully small. "I was afraid of losing the only honest connection I've had in years. I do care about you, about Leo. That's not a lie." For a moment, her anger wavered, overshadowed by a painful ache in her chest. Part of her wanted to believe him, but the past weighed heavy. The father of her child had promised love, then vanished. She'd built a life on trusting no one but herself. And now, once again, the ground had shifted beneath her feet. She shook her head, tears finally slipping free. "I can't do this. I can't believe a word you say. Whatever you felt, maybe it was real, maybe it wasn't, but you kept me in the dark. I won't risk my heart or my son's well-being just so you can figure out how to handle your fancy CEO life." His expression shattered, but she turned away, hugging her own arms against the chill night air. "Go back to your charity event, Ethan Hayes. Help them cut ribbons and write big checks. Just leave me alone." Silence fell between them, thick with words left unsaid. After a long beat, she heard him murmur, "I'm sorry, Sophia," as if he were exhaling the last of his hopes. Footsteps retreated, and she refused to look back, each step of his echoing like a hammer on her heart. Eventually, she collected herself enough to walk to her car. The drive home felt endless, her mind replaying every moment they'd shared. She trudged into her apartment, ignoring her half-finished illustrations and sinking onto the couch. In the darkness, she pressed a fist to her trembling lips. She'd been so close to believing in something again, to letting someone in. A single tear traced her cheek. She'd only wanted a ride to salvage her career, not to reopen the wounds of trust and abandonment. Pulling a blanket over her shoulders, she sat there for a long time, gazing at the scattered paintings of foxes and forests, wondering how she could ever feel whole again. Morning light poured across Sophia's cramped living room, illuminating pencils, paintbrushes, and piles of half-finished sketches. It also revealed a woman on the edge, hair disheveled, eyes rimmed in shadows. She hadn't slept well in days, not since that night outside the charity gala when everything fell apart. Her phone lay silent on the cluttered table, though it wasn't for lack of attempts on Ethan's part. A flurry of texts and missed calls had come in, each unanswered. At first, she'd felt a twisted sense of satisfaction ignoring them, her anger still raw, but now the quiet weighed on her like a lead blanket. She dreaded hearing his voice, yet dreaded the emptiness of not hearing it even more. Turning her attention to the children's anthology spread in front of her, she tried to focus. White Oak had requested final proofs on 2 pages. Normally, she'd relish the chance to perfect her illustrations, but now her hand felt heavy, her creative spark dimmed. Every time she tried to conjure a playful color scheme or whimsical detail, a surge of bitterness rose in her throat. She'd found a flicker of hope with Ethan and discovered it was built on deception. Leo ambled in, still in his dinosaur pajamas, eyes bright with concern. "Mommy, are you sick?" he asked softly, climbing onto the chair beside her. Guilt pinched her heart. Her son didn't deserve this. "No, sweetheart," she lied, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Just tired. Lots of work." He rested his small hand on hers. "You need a break." It was so earnest that Sophia felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. She ruffled his hair. "Yeah, maybe I do." Yet break time was hardly an option. A notification pinged on her laptop, an email from Nicole. "Hey, just a reminder, we really need your final pages by Thursday. Let me know if you're okay." The subtext was clear. They were worried, and she was behind schedule. If she missed this window, all her efforts might slip through the cracks, including her financial stability. She typed a terse reply. "I'm fine. Finalizing today. We'll send soon." The cursor blinked as if calling her bluff. A wave of despair rushed in. Everything felt harder than it should be. She used to lose herself in drawing. Now it was a battlefield of second-guessing and heartbreak. In the kitchen, she found the phone still turned face down. Another 3 missed calls from an unknown number. She suspected it might be him calling from a different line. Maybe he thought she'd pick up if she didn't recognize it. Unbidden, memories flickered of how Ethan had shown up with medicine for Leo in the dead of night. How he'd listened to her talk about her dreams. Could all of that have been a lie? But every time sympathy crept up, she recalled the image of him in a designer suit called Mr. Hayes by starstruck donors, and the sense of betrayal returned. Hugging herself, she fought a tremor of confusion. She'd built her life around caution, yet she'd let him in, only to get stung by secrets. Across the room, her half-finished fox illustrations beckoned. With a ragged breath, she sat down at the desk, forcing herself to work. The tip of her brush trembled, but she pressed on, layering colors for a background scene of a forest lit by gentle morning light. As she worked, a small sense of calm emerged, reminding her that this art was her lifeline, independent of any man's lies. Hours later, she realized she hadn't moved from the chair. The pages had progressed, albeit slowly. Maybe that was enough for today. She put down the brush, shoulders aching, and noticed Leo watching a cartoon quietly on the couch. He looked her way, giving a tiny thumbs up. For the first time in days, Sophia smiled, albeit faintly. She might be drowning in silence, but at least she wasn't alone. And maybe, if she kept her focus on what mattered, her son, her art, she'd find a path through the wreckage, even if she had to do it without Ethan Hayes and all the illusions he'd brought with him. The scent of chamomile tea drifted through Mrs. Henderson's humble kitchen as she carefully filled 2 delicate cups. Sophia sat at the small wooden table, feeling strangely like a child being consoled by a grandmother. In a way, that was exactly what was happening. She'd fled her apartment after a tense conversation with Clara, who'd pushed her harder than ever before. Clara's words still echoed. "You're not just mad at Ethan for lying. Deep down, you're mad at yourself for trusting him." The accusation had hit like a punch to the gut. Sophia had yelled back in defensive anger, but part of her recognized the sting of truth. Now, she gratefully wrapped her hands around the warm teacup. Mrs. Henderson settled across from her, adjusting a shawl over her shoulders. "That girl of yours is worried," the older woman began softly, nodding toward the wall they shared. "And you're worried too, just in a different way." Sophia sighed. "I'm tired, Mrs. Henderson. Tired of feeling so unsteady." She took a careful sip, letting the tea's warmth soothe her throat. "I let him in, let him meet Leo. He was around when no one else was. And then I found out." Her voice caught. Even now, after ignoring him for days, the betrayal still felt sharp. Ethan. The name itself sounded alien, like a character from someone else's story. I feel like I was tricked, like everything I shared with him was on false terms. Mrs. Henderson nodded, her gaze tender. "I lost my husband quite young, long before we ever had children. For years, I shut myself off from anyone who tried to get close. I was convinced letting someone in would only end in grief." She paused, eyes distant. "Then, eventually, I realized grief finds us no matter what, and so does love, if we're brave enough." Sophia's throat tightened. She'd heard bits of Mrs. Henderson's story before, but never with such stark honesty. "But what if the love isn't real?" Sophia asked, voice trembling. "He lied about who he was. What if everything else was a lie, too?" Mrs. Henderson pursed her lips thoughtfully. "There's a difference between lying to deceive and hiding out of fear. That boy, Ethan, might have been terrified you'd only see his money, not his heart. Maybe that was foolish, but fear makes folks do foolish things." Sophia blinked, tears edging her vision. She remembered how Ethan had looked whenever he spoke of his obligations, the quiet sadness in his eyes. Could it be fear rather than manipulation? Part of her wanted to throw her arms up and say no, that she knew better, but Clara had insisted she examine her own history, the father of Leo who vanished, the pain that forced her to handle everything alone. Could it be she'd overreacted, or at least not understood Ethan's perspective? A knock at the door broke the hush. Startled, Sophia stood. "I'll check," she murmured, stepping into the hall. But instead of Ethan, she found Clara, sheepish and apologetic. "Sorry about earlier," her friend said, stepping forward, "but I can't watch you shut down again, not after how far you've come." Sophia bowed her head, letting out a shaky breath. "I'm sorry too. You were right. I'm furious with myself as much as him." She gestured for Clara to join them. "I just don't know how to forgive this, or if I should." They moved back into the kitchen, where Mrs. Henderson was busy arranging ginger cookies on a plate. Clara gave Sophia's arm a supportive squeeze. "You don't have to decide everything today," she offered, "but maybe you could talk to him, get real answers, if only so you can move on." Mrs. Henderson's kind smile returned. "Even if you can't forgive him, my dear, you deserve the chance to hear the truth, and he deserves the chance to offer it. What you do after that is up to you." Sophia stared at the steaming tea, heart pulsing with a confusion of emotions. Ethan's betrayal still cut deep, but a seed of doubt, an inkling that maybe there was more to the story, had taken root. She sighed, feeling the warmth of her friend's concern envelop her. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. Outside, the afternoon sun gleamed through the curtains, a subtle reminder that every dark night eventually yields to light, even if the dawn brings complicated truths. Sophia walked slowly through the tree-lined path of Emerson Park, her nerves buzzing with every step. The canopy overhead rustled in a mild breeze, sunlight filtering through leaves in shifting patterns of light and shade, an apt metaphor for the uncertainty in her heart. She spotted Ethan seated on a bench beneath a large oak. For a fleeting moment, she almost turned back, but then she remembered the resolve she'd gained from Clara and Mrs. Henderson's counsel. She needed answers. Ethan stood as she approached, hands tucked in his jacket pockets. Dressed more casually than at the gala, he still radiated a quiet gravitas that reminded her of the wealth and power he must command. But his expression was pensive, even vulnerable. "Thank you for agreeing to see me," he said softly. She offered a curt nod, lowering herself onto the bench while maintaining a polite distance. The soft chirp of birds mingled with the distant hum of city life. "I'm here to listen," she replied, arms folded, "but don't mistake that for instant forgiveness." Pain flickered in his gaze, and he nodded. "I understand." He sank back onto the bench, taking a moment before speaking. I was burnt out. My board and investors demanded more and more. My personal life was non-existent. Everyone saw me as Ethan Hayes, the unstoppable CEO. But I felt suffocated. So I slipped away to Asheville, hoping to blend in and rediscover what it's like to just be a person. Her jaw clenched. So you invented Alex, and let me assume you were just a decent guy traveling through. She tried to keep her tone steady, but heard the bitterness in her voice. He exhaled slowly, gaze fixed on the ground. I know how bad it looks, but I never sat down and planned a grand deception. It started as a small omission, my name, my status. And then we connected, and each day it got harder to admit the truth. I kept telling myself I'd come clean tomorrow, then tomorrow, until it was too late. The swirl of conflicting emotions in Sophia's chest tightened. She recalled the gentle kindness he'd shown Leo, the quiet support when her car broke down, the late-night pharmacy run. Could those have been genuine gestures beneath the lie? You made me think we had something in common, that we were both struggling. His dark eyes rose to meet hers. I was struggling, just in a different way. I don't expect pity. I know I'm privileged, but loneliness doesn't care about money. I was profoundly alone. A breeze rustled the branches overhead, drawing Sophia's attention. She studied the shifting patterns of light, wishing her mind felt as tranquil. Why not tell me sooner? She asked in a near whisper. He swallowed, pain flickering on his face. Cowardice, maybe. Fear you'd only see my bank account, that you'd doubt my intentions from the start, but mostly, I was afraid to lose whatever we had. It felt real, and I hadn't felt that in a long time. Her heart twisted. She believed, on some level, the raw tremor in his voice. Still, the betrayal stung. Well, you definitely lost it now, she murmured, hating the tears that threatened. I can't pretend none of this happened. I can't unknow how easy it was for you to lie. Ethan nodded, voice thick. I get it. And if you can't forgive me, I won't blame you. I just needed you to know why. They sat in silence for a long moment. A group of children chased each other on the grass nearby, their laughter a sweet reminder of simpler joys. Finally, Sophia cleared her throat. I appreciate the explanation, but I'm not ready to trust you, or to let you back into my life so easily. He gave a slow, sorrowful nod. I won't push, but if you ever decide we can talk more, I'll be here. Or back in my corporate tower, he added with a self-deprecating shrug. She almost laughed, a humorless sound that never left her throat. Standing, she hoisted her purse over her shoulder. I have a lot to figure out, Ethan, she said, deliberately using his real name, and I don't know if we can fix this, but... And thank you for telling me. He rose too, keeping a respectful distance. Thank you for listening. There was yearning in his eyes, but he didn't move closer. Sophia turned, walking away with her emotions in turmoil. Yet, in the tangle of confusion, a tiny seed of relief sprouted. At least some truths were in the open now. Whether they could heal what had been broken was another matter entirely. Sophia's apartment looked like an explosion of art supplies, paper scraps, watercolor palettes, tubes of paint, and pencil stubs scattered across the table. Yet, amid the chaos, she felt a rare sense of control. She'd spent the past 3 days in creative overdrive, determined to finish the anthology illustrations on time, and determined to pour every last drop of her emotional turbulence onto the page. She'd parted from Ethan in confusion, but somehow the conversation had freed her. The bitterness that once clogged her artistry now flowed into potent images. Each stroke of color vibrated with raw feeling. The Fox family in her final piece gazed at one another with expressions of vulnerability and tentative love, a mirror, she realized, of her own tumultuous heart. Leo peered at her from behind the couch. "Mom, your foxes look different," he observed, stepping closer. "They look happier," Sophia paused, blinking at the illustration. Indeed, she'd painted the fox cub reaching out to the mother with a playful grin, brightening the page. "Yeah," she murmured, "I guess they do." A gentle thrill buzzed through her veins. After everything that happened, she felt more deeply connected to her work. Truth shimmered in her brushstrokes. She wasn't just drawing pictures for a paycheck anymore. She was communicating something real about trust, about fragility, about hope. A knock sounded at the door. She set aside her brush and welcomed Nicole inside. The fellow illustrator carried a folder under one arm and a big smile. "Richard's going to love these," Nicole said before even looking at them. "He was praising your last batch, by the way, said the emotion in your illustrations had jumped off the page." Sophia flushed with a mix of pride and relief. Handing Nicole the newly finished pieces, she felt a sense of closure. "Here are the final ones," she said, exhaling. "I really hope they fit what he wants." Nicole flipped through the pages carefully, her grin widening. "They more than fit, Sophia. This is beautiful work, like you've tapped into a deeper well." She studied a particularly poignant panel featuring the fox cub hugging the mother. "I can feel the story behind these characters. You've poured your heart into it." Emotions welled in Sophia's chest, but she fought back tears. She'd poured heartbreak, confusion, and fragile hope into these pages, and somehow it all crystallized into something resonant. "Thanks," she whispered. Nicole tucked the drawings into her folder. "I'll get these to Richard today. Oh, and remember the festival we talked about? There's about a week left to sign up. If you want to share a booth, I'm still game." She eyed Sophia expectantly. Part of Sophia hesitated. The last few weeks had been a storm of revelations and heartbreak. Was she ready to face the public in a bustling festival environment? But then she thought of the spark she felt while creating, the affirmation that her art mattered. Maybe this was the next step in reclaiming her life on her own terms. "Let me think about it," she said, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "I might just do it." With a parting hug, Nicole left, leaving Sophia in the swirl of her now slightly lighter apartment. She gazed around the cluttered room, her sanctuary for the last stretch of work, and felt a calm pride. She'd survived her darkest moment, found a deeper reservoir of creativity, and even managed a cautious conversation with Ethan. As she began tidying the table, her phone buzzed with an email from Richard. "Got the pages? Fantastic job. This is exactly the emotional depth we want. Proud to have you on board." Her heart lifted. For the first time since discovering Ethan's secret, her smile reached her eyes. She glanced at Leo, who was now happily coloring a picture of a dinosaur. The open window let in a soft breeze, carrying the scent of fresh grass and the promise of something new. Stepping over scattered art materials, Sophia felt an unexpected surge of hope. Yes, she was still uncertain about her relationship with Ethan, if one even remained. But she wasn't uncertain about herself. She was an artist, a mother, a woman who'd navigated heartbreak and come out stronger. Perhaps that was the greatest brushstroke of all, painting a brighter future on the canvas of her life. Sophia stepped into White Oak's modest conference room to a round of spontaneous applause. Richard stood at the head of the table, beaming like a proud mentor. Nicole shot her a wink from across the room. Stunned, Sophia managed a small laugh. "What's all this for?" she asked, cheeks coloring. Richard gestured for quiet. "Because you did it. You exceeded our expectations. The anthology's test prints look beautiful, and marketing is already abuzz. We're set for an autumn release." He extended his hand, giving Sophia a firm, congratulatory shake. We're grateful to have your art shaping this project. A tingle of excitement coursed through her. After months of late-night drawing and navigating personal turmoil, here she stood, recognized, accomplished, and on the brink of something entirely new. "Thank you," she said, trying to steady the emotions swelling in her throat. "Really?" After the brief celebration, Sophia lingered with Nicole, flipping through the first sample copy of the children's anthology. Her fox illustrations danced across the pages, bright yet poignant, telling a story of familial love that, in many ways, mirrored her own journey. She brushed a fingertip over the final page. "It's surreal seeing it in print," she admitted. Nicole bumped shoulders with her. "Surreal and well-deserved. So, you ready for the festival now?" She waved a festival flyer teasingly. "I'm signing us up for a shared booth by tomorrow's deadline, so I need a yes." A coil of hesitation briefly tightened in Sophia's chest. Public events used to intimidate her, but she recalled how painting these illustrations had reignited her passion, how the bookstore crowd might respond to such heartfelt art, and the festival could open new doors for her budding career. She found herself nodding, excitement glimmering. "Yes, let's do it," Nicole whooped in delight. "Awesome. We'll plan out the booth design soon." She gathered her things to leave, tossing a final grin over her shoulder. "You're unstoppable, Sophie." On her drive home, the late afternoon sunlight painted the Asheville skyline in golden hues. She stopped at a red light, taking a moment to breathe in the sense of achievement that pulsed through her. She'd finished a major project, gained validation from professionals, and reconnected with the creative spark she'd feared was gone forever. Despite heartbreak, she felt more alive than she had in years. Leo was busy playing with building blocks when she arrived. "Hey, buddy," she greeted, ruffling his hair. "I've got good news. The book's going to be published soon." He looked up with wide eyes. "Really? So people can read the story you made for me?" She laughed. "Yep. And hopefully many other kids too." As dusk settled, she found a quiet moment on her small balcony, warm mug of tea in hand. The sun dipped below the mountains, splashing the sky with pink and orange. Her heart swelled with gratitude. She'd come a long way from that battered car in the storm. She closed her eyes, letting the hush of evening envelop her. Inevitably, her thoughts returned to Ethan. She touched her phone, recalling that last conversation in the park. He had bared his insecurities, not as an all-powerful CEO, but as a man burdened by loneliness and the fear of being used. Part of her still ached with betrayal, but a quieter part wondered if they could find an honest connection now that the truth was out. Could she open that door again? Did she want to? She inhaled the evening air, acknowledging that while she was strong enough to stand alone, she missed the warmth of shared vulnerability. Perhaps she didn't have to decide tonight. The final hush of twilight suggested that, in life, as with art, a gentle gradient often led from darkness to light. Standing, she gazed at the bold colors in the sky. The festival beckoned. Her new children's book was underway, and she had refound her identity as an artist and mother, a woman forging her own path. Tomorrow, she might decide whether to send Ethan a message or wait for him to make the next move. Either way, she was no longer driven by desperation or fear. She was heading toward the light on her own terms. Morning sun glinted off rows of canopies at the Asheville Art and Culture Festival, a patchwork of colors and bustle stretching across the fairgrounds. Sophia inhaled the crisp autumn air as she hauled a final box of prints into the booth she shared with Nicole. Around them, vendors hammered signs into place and arranged their crafts, the hum of excited chatter infusing the whole space with a lively pulse. Nicole grinned, wiping her brow. "We did it! Look at this spread!" She gestured to the table laden with Sophia's art, whimsical fox illustrations, prints from her older works, and a small stand showcasing the soon-to-be-released children's anthology. A handwritten sign read, "Original Art by Sophia Alencar." Sophia's heart fluttered. This was her first public art showing in years, and it felt both terrifying and exhilarating. She glanced down at her phone. No new messages. She told Ethan about the festival, but she had no clue if he'd actually come. Part of her wished he wouldn't, to spare her nerves. Another part, undeniably, wanted to see him. Leo scampered around the booth, proudly holding up one of her illustrated flyers. "Come see my mum's pictures!" he exclaimed to passing families. A few parents chuckled and obliged, stepping closer to browse. Sophia's cheeks warmed with gratitude and love for her son's unbridled enthusiasm. By mid-morning, foot traffic grew. Strangers stopped to admire the Fox family prints, some purchasing smaller pieces. Others asked about the anthology's release date, praising the delicate blend of emotional realism in her illustrations. Each comment built Sophia's confidence, layers of self-doubt peeling away in the face of genuine appreciation. Then, in the corner of her vision, she spotted a familiar silhouette, tall, dark-haired, standing just outside the main path. Her pulse jumped. Ethan. He looked uncertain, his gaze tracking her booth from afar. A swirling mix of relief and dread rippled through her. She hadn't expected how fiercely her heart would react. She turned to Nicole, who followed her line of sight. "That's him, isn't it?" Nicole murmured. Sophia nodded. "Yes, I guess he came." Nicole squeezed her shoulder gently. "You good?" Inhaling a steadying breath, Sophia resolved not to let fear dictate her day. "I'm good," she said, shoulders lifting with renewed determination. She offered a customer a polite smile, rang up a print sale, then gathered the courage to look back at Ethan. This time, he caught her eye. She gave a tiny nod, granting silent permission for him to approach if he wished. Ethan moved through the crowd cautiously, as if afraid to intrude. His eyes flicked over the displays of her art, a mixture of admiration and sadness playing across his features. When he finally stood at the edge of her booth, he spoke quietly. "Congratulations," he said, voice tinged with awe. "This is incredible." Heat pricked at her face. "Thanks," she replied. She gestured to the table. "We're still setting up a few things, but sales are going well." He nodded, then glanced at Leo, who beamed and waved. Ethan's tension melted into a brief smile. "Hey, buddy!" Sophia's stomach clenched, memory flashing to those nights Ethan had been a steady presence for her and for Leo. The betrayal still stung, but she couldn't deny the significance of his being here, in public, on her day, supporting her unconditionally. Before she could say more, a passing businessman recognized Ethan. "Oh, Mr. Hayes, great to see you here." He offered an eager handshake, obviously thrilled to encounter the tech mogul in a casual setting. Sophia saw Ethan stiffen, then politely respond. The man asked if Ethan was sponsoring any part of the festival, touting philanthropic interests and rattling off suggestions. Ethan's gaze slid to Sophia, an apology in his eyes. "I'm here as a friend and visitor today," he said, voice quiet yet firm. "Just here to support local art." The businessman seemed a bit taken aback but nodded, drifting away. Sophia exhaled, touched by how Ethan stepped aside from his high-profile role. He gave her a tentative smile, as if seeking approval. Her chest felt tight with conflicting emotions: admiration, hurt, unresolved longing. But the festival's warm energy, Leo's joy, and the success she felt in her own art reminded her that she was no longer trapped in confusion. She was standing squarely in her power. Turning to Ethan, she cleared her throat. "I'm glad you came," she admitted, honest and measured. but I need some time to handle everything today. We can talk later, if you'd like." He nodded, respect lighting his face. "Of course. I'll be around if you need me." Then, with a final, reassuring glance, he slipped into the festival crowd. Watching him go, Sophia felt the world spin around her booth. The day was young, full of promise and potential, and while her heart still wrestled with caution, she sensed that all the storms they'd weathered might lead to something new, if they were both brave enough to face it. Twilight descended on the festival grounds, turning colorful canopies into silhouettes under strands of glowing fairy lights. The energy of the day mellowed into a softer, more intimate mood. Families had drifted home, while small groups of art enthusiasts lingered over final purchases. Sophia's feet ached from standing, but her heart thrummed with triumph. She'd sold more prints than she'd ever anticipated, and Nicole had introduced her to two small indie authors seeking illustrators for their children's books. Leo dozed in a chair behind the booth, a half-eaten funnel cake by his side. Nicole tapped Sophia's shoulder, a spark in her eyes. "You killed it today," she whispered, mindful of not waking Leo. "We're definitely on track to recoup our booth costs, and more importantly, you've put your name out there." "People love your style," Sophia smiled, exhaustion blending with euphoria. "Couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for sharing the booth and cheering me on." Nicole grinned back. "Any time, friend. Now go take a breather. I can start packing up some of your unsold prints. Maybe get a last look around the festival before they close." Sophia hesitated, then spotted Ethan off to the side of the music stage, talking quietly with a local craftsman. She drew a careful breath. "I think I will. Just for a bit." Nicole gave her an encouraging nudge, so Sophia gently shook Leo awake. "Come on, buddy. Let's have Nicole keep an eye on you for a moment, okay?" The sleepy boy nodded, content to remain near their friend. Sophia ruffled his hair, then stepped away. The festival lights flickered against the deepening sky. She found Ethan standing by a half-dismantled stall where the last of the day's music gear was being packed up. He caught sight of her approach and offered a subdued smile. A hint of tension lined his features. "Hey," he said softly. "Heard you had a great day." She nodded, folding her arms. Sales were good, more than good, actually. She hesitated, glancing around the now intimate setting. The hush of the festival's wind down lent them a kind of privacy. "Want to walk for a bit?" "Sure," he replied, relief evident in his posture. They strolled along a makeshift path of twinkling lights, passing booths already closed, festival workers loading their vehicles. The distant hum of conversation and subdued laughter created a gentle backdrop. After a few moments of silence, Sophia spoke first, voice carrying a fragile honesty. "I was scared this morning, scared to see you, worried it'd ruin the day or dredge up hurt, but I'm not regretful you came." Ethan's gaze flickered with hope. "I didn't want to overshadow your success. I meant it when I said I just wanted to support you as a friend. He paused, raking a hand through his hair. "I'm still figuring out how to balance my business responsibilities with living a life that feels authentic. I don't want to lie or hide anymore." Her heart clenched at the sincerity in his voice. There was a time she might have dismissed his words as scripted, but she sensed a rawness behind them now. "It's not easy," she acknowledged. "We all have baggage. Mine is trusting people who say they won't abandon me. Yours might be trusting people not to treat you like a walking ATM." He gave a faint, appreciative laugh. That's a fair summary." They stopped near a cluster of lanterns lining a walkway. The warm glow cast gentle shadows across their faces. "Sophia," he ventured, I never wanted to rob you of your independence or overshadow your art. I only hoped you'd see me, the real me, and still feel something." She swallowed, searching his eyes. "It's complicated," she admitted. "I'm still mad about how everything unfolded, but I also can't deny we had a real connection before I knew your name or net worth." She let a shaky exhale slip. "It's just a lot," he nodded, anguish and tentative optimism mingling in his expression. "I'll give you all the time you need. If you'd rather we remain friends, or if you want no contact, I'll respect that. But I do hope, maybe, she echoed quietly, we can take it slow. Let me keep my space, my voice, and show me that you're serious about being honest from here on out." She held his gaze, stealing her heart. "No more hidden agendas." "Okay." A wave of relief colored Ethan's face. "Okay, I promise." They lingered there for another moment, the festival's soft glow enveloping them. Sophia felt the old ache of betrayal, but also a budding warmth, as if her shattered trust might piece itself back together, slowly, carefully. As they turned back toward the booth where Leo and Nicole waited, she found herself breathing a little easier, letting the festival's lingering magic remind her that nothing was impossible for hearts willing to heal. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, reflecting off a few new prints Sophia had tacked to the wall, her festival favorites, as Leo called them. She was flipping pancakes while he clapped each time one landed on the plate, giggling over the silly shapes she attempted. The sweet, simple routine shimmered with a quiet new warmth. It had been a week since the festival. Sophia smiled at the memory. People admiring her art, Nicole's teasing but supportive presence, and the gentle, honest talk with Ethan under the lantern glow. She couldn't claim all her hurt was magically gone, but a sense of peace had nestled in, displacing much of the fear that once gnawed at her. When the pancakes were done, Leo scarfed them down eagerly. Between bites, he announced, "Mom, guess what? My friend Liam's mom asked if you can draw a dinosaur picture for his birthday. I said you do the best drawings in the world." He beamed with pride, making Sophia laugh. "I'll be sure to make an extra fun T-Rex just for Liam," she replied, ruffling Leo's hair. Her phone buzzed on the counter, revealing an email from Nicole. "Pre-orders for the anthology are looking great. Richard's thrilled. Also, a local kids book blogger wants an interview with you. Interested?" Sophia's heartbeat fluttered. An interview? She'd never been interviewed before. She typed a quick reply. "Yes, absolutely." Another first, another leap forward. After breakfast, she washed up the dishes, humming softly. The memory of Ethan's expression lingered. He'd offered no grand gestures of wealth or sweeping romance since the festival. Just a few texts or brief calls where he checked on her and Leo, always respectful of her pace, and that, surprisingly, felt more genuine than any gift. He was letting her set the rhythm this time. In late afternoon, the phone buzzed again. This time, Ethan's name glowed on the screen. Sophia answered with a tentative smile in her voice. "Hey!" "Hey!" he echoed, warmth evident. "I'm picking up some supplies for my place. Thought I'd check if you or Leo needed anything. Groceries, art supplies, random stuff." She chuckled softly, imagining the once high-powered CEO wandering an art store, phone in hand. "We're good, thanks, but if you want, you could pick up Leo from school tomorrow. It's my busiest deadline day, and it'd help if I don't have to rush out, only if you're comfortable with that." A brief pause. "I'd love to," he said, genuine relief in his tone. "I'll be on time. Promise." After they hung up, Sophia realized she'd taken another small step, inviting him into a daily routine moment that affected Leo. She felt a pang of anxiety. What if it stirred too many questions from teachers or other parents? Then again, he wasn't a stranger or a lie. He was trying to be part of her real life, flaws and all. The next day, Ethan texted her at 2:59 p.m., arrived at the school, waiting outside. "Don't worry, everything's fine." She exhaled, tension ebbing. Half an hour later, a photo popped up, Ethan and Leo smiling in front of the school's mural, Leo holding Ethan's hand. Warmth flooded her chest. When they came home, Leo burst through the door first, chattering excitedly about how Ethan had asked him questions about dinosaurs the whole walk back. Ethan followed, a bit shy, glancing around the living room as if uncertain he belonged there. Sophia offered a faint smile, appreciating his careful approach. "Thank you," she said quietly, meeting his eyes. It helped. He nodded, returning the gentle look. "Any time." The moment was small, domestic, yet it held a new kind of significance. She recognized how drastically her world had changed, not because of Ethan's money or status, but because she'd found her own strength, enough to let someone help without feeling weak. Later that evening, after Ethan left, she reflected on how normal it felt for them to share these everyday tasks. A year ago, she never would have imagined letting a man see so deeply into her parenting life, nor trusting him to pick up Leo, but she'd grown. And for now, it seemed they were building something grounded in honest truths, step by step. Yes, challenges loomed. The pressures of Ethan's corporate sphere might clash with her simpler routine. She still nursed wounds from his hidden identity. But in the gentle hush of her apartment that night, Sophia realized she was living proof that heartbreak could coexist with hope, and that, if nurtured carefully, hope could grow stronger each day. The local indie bookstore, Mountain Pages, had set up a cheery children's corner with beanbag chairs, colorful bunting, and a low stage for visiting authors and illustrators. Sophia hovered off to the side, heart fluttering despite the modest size of the gathering. She wasn't used to being in the spotlight, but she recalled her festival experience and the warmth she'd felt sharing her creations. Nicole was there, beaming encouragement, while a handful of parents and kids flipped through preview copies of the anthology. Leo perched at the front, hugging a plush fox toy that resembled the one in his mum's illustrations. When the bookstore manager, Amanda, stepped up to the little mic, she introduced Sophia with an enthusiastic grin. "Folks, let's welcome the talented illustrator behind our upcoming children's anthology, Sophia Alencar." Polite applause and some childlike cheers erupted. Sophia swallowed hard, then approached the mic. She wore a simple blouse splashed with paint stains, ironic evidence of her creative process. "Hi everyone," she began, voice quivering a bit. "I'm really honored to be here today, sharing a sneak peek of the stories and illustrations we've been working on." She proceeded to display the cover art, then turned a few pages of the anthology, letting the group see her Fox family drawings. As she spoke about the process, late-night watercolor washes, searching for just the right expression, she noticed heads nodding, intrigued. A young boy exclaimed, "I love foxes," which made everyone chuckle. After a short reading by Amanda, who narrated one of the anthology's short stories, the kids peppered Sophia with questions. "How do you draw the eyes? Does the fox have a name? Did you always want to be an artist?" She answered each with a growing sense of joy, marveling at how comfortable she felt guiding children's curiosity. Then a woman near the back, holding a toddler on her hip, raised her hand. "I'm trying to start sketching again," she admitted, voice tinged with uncertainty. "But it's hard juggling a child and a job. Any advice?" Her question hung in the air, resonating deeply with Sophia. Recalling her own journey, the nights she'd collapsed in exhaustion, the times she questioned if her art was worth it, Sophia gently smiled. It's a balancing act. I think the most important thing is to keep your dream alive in any small way you can. Even if it's just 10 minutes after your child's bedtime or one sketch a weekend, consistency over time builds amazing things. And don't be afraid to lean on supportive people in your life. She caught a glimpse of Ethan in the back of the store, standing unobtrusively near a shelf, his eyes shining with pride. He didn't push forward or try to claim the moment. He simply stood as a quiet pillar of support, reminding her how far they'd come, together, yet still respecting each other's space. The woman nodded, tears glistening. "Thank you," she whispered. And in that moment, Sophia felt a surge of gratitude. She realized she wasn't just drawing for herself now. She was an example that life could hold second chances, that parenthood didn't eclipse creativity, and that heartbreak didn't have to poison hope. After the Q&A, children lined up for mini Fox sketches on bookmarks. Sophia's hand flew over the paper with practiced ease, and each completed doodle felt like a gift, proof she'd persevered through storms to get here. By the time the event wrapped, the bookstore staff thanked her profusely, and a few parents asked about commissioning personal illustrations. She carefully placed their contact info into a folder, smiling at the possibilities. As the crowd dispersed, Nicole swooped in, hugging Sophia tight. "You were amazing," she gushed. "So genuine. Everyone loved you." Sophia exhaled with a laugh, relief and happiness swirling. "It felt right," she admitted. "Like I'm finally sharing what I've learned, not just what I've drawn." In the corner of her eye, Ethan gave her a small, approving wave, then slipped out the door to avoid drawing attention. She couldn't help but feel warmth ripple through her chest. He was giving her room to shine on her own, yet staying present enough to show he cared. Whether or not their path would be smooth, she knew they were both learning something essential. Vulnerability and authenticity might be the greatest forms of strength. The official launch for White Oak's new children's anthology was a modest affair in the publisher's cozy lounge area. Yet every seat was occupied by local supporters, curious readers, and staff members who'd followed Sophia's journey. Balloons in bright primary colors dotted the corners, and the tang of fresh coffee mingled with the scent of newly printed books stacked on a table. Sophia stood near the front, heart fluttering with excitement, as Richard introduced the anthology's contributors. She spotted Nicole in the audience, flashing a double thumbs up. Leo sat beside Mrs. Henderson, wearing an enormous grin. He seemed more delighted than anyone. "And last but certainly not least," Richard announced, "our talented illustrator, Sophia Alencar, whose heartfelt art has truly brought these stories to life." Applause echoed against the wood-paneled walls, and Sophia felt tears prick her eyes. She stepped forward, holding the book that bore her Fox family illustrations, now officially in print for young readers across Asheville and possibly beyond. "This book," she began, voice a bit shaky, "represents so much to me. I poured my own doubts, hopes, and love into every illustration. I hope children who read it see themselves in these pages, see that, no matter the storms they face, there's always a way to find connection and a sense of home." She paused, emotion tightening her throat. "Thank you to White Oak for believing in my work, and thank you to everyone here for sharing this moment." The applause that followed was soft, yet profoundly genuine. Richard signaled for her to join the other creators, and together they started signing copies for the small line of parents, kids, and well-wishers. Every time a child approached, wide-eyed and excited, Sophia's heart brimmed with gratitude. Eventually, the crowd began to thin, and she found a quiet corner to catch her breath. That was when Ethan approached. He wore a simple sweater and jeans, blending comfortably with the local crowd. She gave him a hesitant and welcoming smile as he neared. "You made it," she said softly. "Wouldn't miss it for the world," he replied, sincerity shining in his dark eyes. Congratulations. It's incredible. She closed the book she'd been holding, hugging it to her chest. Thank you. For a moment, they just stood there, absorbing the swirl of life around them. Chatter, laughter, the hush of pages turning. Ethan took a breath. Meeting you changed me, Sophia. I can't claim I'm a different man overnight, but I'm seeing the value of slowing down, of being present for real moments like this instead of burying myself in corporate demands. I owe that awakening to you. Her cheeks warmed. The memory of the first time he'd offered her a ride under that torrential rain flickered through her mind. I never asked for anything more than honesty and kindness, she said, voice steady. I understand you have responsibilities, but I need to know you won't hide yourself again. He nodded earnestly. No more hiding. If you let me, I want to find a middle ground. I'll keep up with what I must do in my career, but I won't disappear behind it, and I want to support you, invest in your future if you ever need it, but only if and how you're comfortable. I respect your independence. Tears threatened to blur her vision. Not so long ago, she would have scoffed at the idea of letting a wealthy man help, but she realized now that help didn't have to mean losing herself. I appreciate the offer, she whispered, and I'll let you know what I need. We'll figure it out together, step by step. They drifted closer, the hush between them charged with possibility. So, Ethan ventured, attempting a lightness in his tone, does that mean there's a chance for us? Sophia's lips curved into a soft smile. I'd like to find out, yes. She placed her hand gently in his. We'll do it all openly. No secrets, no masks. His fingers closed around hers, relief and gratitude suffusing his expression. Agreed. Across the room, Leo noticed and gave a little cheer, making them both laugh. Nicole flashed them a knowing grin. The space was filled with small tokens of support, friends, family, and new colleagues who'd witnessed Sophia's rise from struggling freelancer to published illustrator. Catching Ethan's eye again, Sophia felt a deep resonance in her chest, as if a final puzzle piece had clicked into place. She had her art, her son, and now a man who was willing to meet her in honesty and respect. The storms that once battered her life had led to this moment, forging a stronger, wiser heart within her. Outside the windows, the late afternoon sun bathed Asheville's streets in golden light. A metaphor, perhaps, for the new horizons Sophia had discovered. She gave Ethan's hand a gentle squeeze, and he returned it with warmth. For the first time in a long while, Sophia truly believed that whatever happened after that fateful car ride was not a mere illusion, but the start of something real, something worth facing any storm together. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.